To the March 19th Economic Development and Tourism Committee meeting. It is 12:01, and I'm going to ask Senator Hodges if you'd open us up in a word of prayer.
10. Pray with me, please. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for all the many blessings you've bestowed upon us, Lord, especially this beautiful day. Lead us and guide us as we tend to the affairs of the people of the state of Georgia. Grant us wisdom and help us to understand what our constituents need. These things we ask in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Okay, we've got two items on the agenda today. First is HB 625. It's a committee sub. And I believe, if you would come up, Representative Mathis, it's LC 473073S. Is that correct? Yes. All right. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. It's been a kind of long road here with the coroner bill going for several years. It's been 30 years since anything's been done to adjust anything as far as the coroners, but I was asked by one of the senators to kind of explain a little bit about what the coroners do, and it has evolved over the years to be something that is a little more technical, and we need to make sure that we keep competent people in these positions. As you know, as a General Assembly, we've poured money into the GBI Crime Lab over the last few years trying to get forensic pathologists and medical examiners with no success. These medical examiners, there's not that many out there. They're competitive pricing with private companies, and the state has a hard time recruiting. We even offered scholarships to allow students to go that would guarantee working 2 years for us to go to the GBI Crime Lab. At one point, we even had to close crime lab in the regional areas because we didn't have enough doctors. So the coroner system is one of the oldest systems there is in our country. It came from England, it came over here. The coroner system deals with death investigation. Now in the state of Georgia, we have 159 counties. We have 4 counties that use the medical examiner system. What they do is they hire a medical examiner. And that's Cobb County, that's Fulton County, that's DeKalb County, and that's Gwinnett County. We do have one county south of here in Clayton. They have I'm not sure exactly what that system is there. It's a contract system. I don't quite understand it. But anyway, so the rest of the counties, except the 4, have coroner system. What the coroner system does is death investigation. A lot of people are confused when you have a medical examiner or forensic doctor, like in DeKalb County, let's just say. If they get a call, that medical examiner does not go to the crime scene. They do not go to the unattended death scene. Death investigators go. They are hired by the counties, and they assist the medical examiner. They go out and do all the fact finding, working with the law enforcement and the EMS. So when they come back, they give that information to that medical examiner in DeKalb County, and they do autopsies or body exams. So what in essence the coroner system is doing is we are doing the death investigation for the state to turn them over to the GBI Crime Lab for the medical examiner to do where counties can't afford to have medical examiners. That's what we're doing, the same exact thing that they're doing. And what we do is we have to work with law enforcement and we work with the EMS. What we do by that is we take the information based on the health that has been given, the investigation by law enforcement, and we determine cause and manner of death. A cause of death is like a heart attack or some kind of injury or a gunshot. The manner of death is it's going to be natural, or is it going to be accident, or is it going to be suicide, is it going to be homicide, or undetermined. And what we do, we always explain, it's like a triangle. You have the medical, you have the law enforcement, and you have the coroner. You got 3 eyes looking at this to come up with the actual cause and manner of death. And it's a wonderful thing to have those eyes on that, to try to come up for your loved one and my loved one the best answer for what that cause of death was. So that's what the coroner system is. And the coroner system's cost will be tremendously less than if we had to go to some other system and hire forensic doctors and hire death investigators to do that work. So the counties, yes, it has been overlooked for years what the coroner's done. And I'm going to take blame, and I think some others, that we have not explained exactly what we do. There are certain obligations that we have when we have a death. If it's a child, we have to get DFACS, we have to get child fatality review. We have all these things that have to go through. When we get a death that we suspect maybe a suicide or a homicide, we have to talk to death investigators at the GBI Crime Lab to see if they will allow an autopsy to be done. So what my point is, the coroner system keeps counties with a one-on-one worker there to do a death investigation to move forward if we need to. But I will reiterate to you that the coroner has the final say after all the investigation to what the cause and manner of death is. So it's a very, very important thing. Just recently, just yesterday, I went to a funeral of a friend of mine. Doug Davis had a massive heart attack up in Bartow County at the sports arena. The coroner's office out of Bartow County was magnificent. They went through the process with the law enforcement, the EMS. They determined with the health history and the things that went on that this case was a natural death. They moved forward. We looked right over in Athens, Clark County when we had that terrible tragedy with Lake and Riley. That coroner's office did its job because you hadn't heard anything about it not doing its job. They did a great job. So that's what we're trying to do here, is to compensate people that we can put in these positions that are competent. We found out as a General Assembly that we've had to raise teachers' pay. We've had to all of our agencies, we've had to raise pay to make sure we have people that are competent. And that's what we're trying to do here. It's not that we're trying to put a burden on counties, because here would be a burden. If a coroner doesn't do his job or her job, we'd have if this was your loved one that we were dealing with, we want to make sure we get it right. And we want to make sure we're fair to the people that do it, and to keep competent people to do these jobs, they have to be compensated. You have argument from different agencies that says the coroner is not 24/7. I beg to differ. My daddy was coroner in Blecker County for 40 years. I was coroner for 18 years. At the end of this term, my son would have been coroner 8 years. So there's been all those years of Mathis has been a coroner. But my son is not running, so I'm out of the coroner business. Our business in the funeral home has grown so that we cannot handle it. So what I'm trying to say to y'all, I'm not trying to dog counties. We got a small county. Now, my county is very, very appreciative of the coroner system. We have other counties that do a great job, and they go above what's even asked here. But we got some that do nothing. And then that's where we run into the trouble of when we have these cases, maybe a high-profile case or something, or your loved one or my loved one, and they don't do their job, then we have trouble. And we don't want that. We want what the investigation is determined. A lot of people think autopsies give you all the answers. They don't. I think national average is 3% of autopsies do not show what caused manner of death is. So, I mean, it's not like, so you got to have people on the ground with the law enforcement, the medical profession, and the coroners to work together to come up with a satisfactory, with the correct cause and manner of death. So that is what basically the bill is. We know that there's been some substitutes to it, and Will Wade is here with me. He has worked tirelessly with Ted Bearden, who was with the Coroners Association. Ted's been working on this for years. And so what we're trying to do is not put a burden. We're trying in the long run, if we take care of this business now, it's going to save us in the long run. That's what I believe. I wouldn't tell you if I didn't believe it. I'm trying to tell you both sides of the story. I'm not trying to tell you one to lean you one way and another. I'm telling you the truth. Both sides of the story. Yes, it's going to cost some counties some more money, but in the long run, if we don't keep the death investigation industry in this state good, it hurts us when we go to litigation. It hurts us in anything that we do. It has a lot of implications to what we do as far as families. Death certificates have to be done for you to go through all the legal things that we have to do. It's so important, and we need competent people doing it, and that's what we're asking for. And I'll be glad to answer any questions if we can, and Will's going to help us out.
Representative Wade, would you like to make a few comments before I open it up for discussion?
If that's okay, yes,
Yeah.
sir. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to the committee members. And I also want to acknowledge, I appreciate the willingness to have the hearing and for you guys to provide your insight on the bill with a substitute. I want to acknowledge something that I will accept as a friendly deletion from our original request, and it has to do with the deputy coroner, what the House voted on to support the acknowledgement of what deputy coroners do in our state. In statute, I'm sure you know that counties are only required to have a coroner and one deputy. It's up to the county commission to determine caseload, the average age of their community, if a coroner should receive funding from the county commission for additional. So we were not attempting to try to change that. What I want to acknowledge is my generation and the next generation. And I was made to care about this issue through, as a school board member, seeing young students commit suicide, as a chairman of a board of education, sitting down with those families with the coroner, having to watch my father pass away. And honestly, had I not had a coroner back home that was able to help us, the person that was there was trying to push a different agenda. Naming my father's death was something other than Alzheimer's. I won't get into the politics of that day. He passed away on March 11th of 2021. So my interest in this is sincere, because I can tell you that the unemployment rate is as low as it is when you're trying to find somebody that's, number one, willing to do the work, being able to set aside their family time and put their kids' baseball games, softball games, weddings, whatever it is. If they're on call, they're on call. And a lot of employers try to work with folks to be able to be flexible to allow a deputy coroner to have that. But there are some jobs that you cannot just drop the ball and go take a death case. So coroners have to administer and they have to juggle. But I accept that that can be a debate for another day. So I accept that reduction, and I think Danny is amenable to us not adding that language back in, and so I'm fine with that. What I do want to notate is potentially, I had an opportunity to review the sub. There's two small changes I would like the committee to consider. I have copies of this here, if I can give it to the chairman to hand out. It's very simple. Is that permissible?
Yeah.
Here, I'll bring it to you. If you want to take one, pass it down. And I'll give the explanation as to why I think it's important to consider these slight changes. The intent when we were negotiating with the Coroner Association as well as ACCG, I worked with talking to county commissioners in my district as well as coroners in my district, is if a coroner is elected, we're trying to update the pay scale to minimum standards. That's what this does. ACCG has testified on the House side that they're amenable to the numbers that we came. These are minimum. The vast majority of the counties I represent are already paying their coroner well above this minimum standard. So it's not benefiting anybody in my area, but it is going to benefit some folks in the state. The other area of concern is if a coroner's been elected 1, 2, 3, or 4 times and they've received COLAs, like sheriffs have received COLAs, we don't have it. The intent was not to take away something that they had earned that other officers, elected officials have received in those communities. So that's on lines 93 and 95. What the bill does acknowledge with the Senate's amendment and our willingness to accept it is the fact that if a coroner decides, I think you said your son is not going to finish his term, so he is not going to be running for re-election. Whoever decides to run for election and is elected, the county commission would have the discretion under this legislation to go back to the minimum. To give you an idea, if a 25-year-old's elected, brand new to the job, maybe they haven't earned their stripes yet, they still got to finish training, whatever it is, the county will have the opportunity to go to the minimum standard and not have the same expense that they had for somebody that had been in office for 20 years. So we acknowledge that that is a good policy for counties to be able to manage their budgets and acknowledge who is leaving versus who is coming in. And lastly, we wanted to also ensure that we did not burden a mandated benefit package for the smallest counties. ACC expressed concerns. I acknowledge those concerns. Danny acknowledged those concerns. So that's why we came up with a minimum caseload of 75 cases in a county. I would like, if you would consider replacing the term personally conducted with administered. Because of the coroner's responsibility in the 21st century, they're actually conducting every single case is not realistic. They do conduct many cases. I spoke to my coroners, and most of the coroners are actually hands-on doing somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60% of the cases. My coroner would not mind me saying, his name is Ted Bearden. He has been here to testify several times. He was the president of the Coroner Association. He is getting close to retirement. His staff and his team in our community expects him to be available during when the sun's up to the sun's down. His deputies cover night shifts. So there may be deaths that happen at night that he is not the one that directly takes that case. However, he signs the death certificate. He is the one that if there's a court case, if he has to work with a crime lab, he's the chief of that office, and he will take on the responsibility to make sure that that case is done. So the definition of personally conducted, to me, I think is not realistic to how the entire office of a coroner's office works. That's the only two changes that I'm requesting from this committee to your substitute to House Bill 625, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and I do appreciate your time and consideration. It's something I feel very passionate about.
All right, let's open it up for some questions. Senator Hickman?
Thank you. Thank you all both for being here. Give me some indication about continuing education. Surely, just like any other professional, the coroner has to maintain a certain amount of continuing education going forward. Is there such a thing?
Yes, sir, we do. We have to take the basics to start with. You have to have a 40-hour course that you go through. Then every year, we have 24-hour courses that we go to the training center, Gypstick, and we go through. Matter of fact, one of the death investigators that used to be with DeKalb County is our instructor now. He does a wonderful job, and we have to do that every year. So, yes, sir, we are.
And the second question would be, when a death happens, we had a death in our family. My sister-in-law committed suicide several years ago. So the sheriff is the one that calls the coroner in, the coroner doesn't automatically go to every...
No, sir. They're called in if it's an unintended death or if it's a case like what you just explained, a suicide. We are called in to investigate. And then what you do is you go through the medical history, you go through what the law enforcement. A lot of times what we do is when the sheriff's department or police department get there, they assess the situation, okay? Like if they get there and EMS is there and they determine that the person is not going to be revived, they back out. They make sure that they secure the scene. Then they call the coroner. The coroner is responsible for the individual that is down, okay, the body. The law enforcement is in charge of all the investigation around it. They do not move that individual until that coroner gets there.
That's right.
Okay? And then we take responsibility for the loved one, okay? In those cases, what we do then, if the sheriff's department believes that we need, or the police department believes that we need to get the GBI involved, they get the GBI involved. They come in, they do their investigation, then we all sit down and we decide what we need to do next. Most of the time, that's when the coroner steps in and says, we will call GBI Crime Lab and see what kind of procedure we need to move forward. Okay, and a suicide, there's several different ways that's done. So what we do is they determine, the death investigators, they make a determination whether we need to bring that individual in for an autopsy, and that's what we do.
And I know that our city and county governments, for the most part right now, are working very diligently on their budgets. I know our county, Bullock County, has met now several times during the week. And I know in the original bill, this went in effect July 1 of 24. I think y'all have now extended it
to
The January
1st
1
of January of
January
25.
1 of
Yes.
25, which would allow
Yes.
them to kind of regroup.
Yes, sir.
and
That's
get
correct.
there and particularly amend the budget.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, we've got Senator Eccles and then Senator Watson.
Thank you. So I have three questions. The first one, are coroners elected in every county in Georgia?
Every county, a coroner's elected. Now, let me explain something. When you have a medical examiner, the state of Georgia has two systems, the medical examiner system or the coroner system. If you're in the coroner system, you are elected every 4 years, just like a sheriff, tax collector,
Right.
clerk of court. Just exactly the same. You have to disclose money that you take in,
Correct.
financial disclosures, everything.
Thank you.
So you are. But the medical examiner is hired, so that is different. And the county has that option
Okay.
that they can hire their own.
So would that be a decision made by the county commission?
Yeah, I would have guessed so.
Okay. My next question, so how many counties don't have coroners?
4,
Which counties are those? do you know?
DeKalb, Cobb, Gwinnett, and Fulton.
And they use the medical examiners
Medical
instead?
examiner with death investigators.
Okay. And then my final question, the amendment, does ACCG support that amendment?
I would-
can't answer that.
I can't answer that question. I know that, I can tell you, Mr. Edwards and I have had many passionate discussions. I'm sure they have a position. I was never given an insight as to the reason that they had requested the language personally conducted. We, just being transparent, that may be a policy position of their council, that's fine. But what we had negotiated with the purpose and the intent was to set the 75 cases, to acknowledge that smaller counties would not have to comply. It wasn't to try to dictate how each coroner's office runs their office. I know there may be some coroners that there's a concern I've heard. I don't think it's something that's vast, but that a coroner's going to be elected, they're going to get the minimum salary, and then they're just going to have their coroner, deputy coroners do all the cases. I just don't think that's practically what's happening across the state. And if there's an outlier like that, it is a political position. I'm certain that county commissioners and community members would be made well aware of that, and there would be, I would think, in most communities, political consequences if a coroner decided to be elected and not do their job.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Senator Watson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it still true that the coroner is the only person that can arrest the sheriff?
You know, I get that question asked a lot of times.
I really don't. I don't.
I think that's kind of a past history thing.
It's
I think now with
not
these,
true anymore. GBI
Yeah.
or somebody like that.
Well,
or
what it is,
FBI.
if a sheriff has a chief deputy, he automatically
He could do that. All right.
takes care of that.
So anyway, that's.
I think I'm correct on that.
Yeah. So it's not. That's not true though. That the coroner can arrest the sheriff.
Well, I guess we'd have to statute on that, but I was
Okay.
always told it was, but I think that has evolved
All right.
into something different.
All right,
Yeah.
so
not the only
having,
one.
that has absolutely nothing to do with this bill, by the way. So, listen, I'm, as practicing physician and geriatric, so I have patients that pass away, and listen, mortality is 100%, right? We're all going to die. So I think the system is working well. So this is, as Senator Lucas says, it's all about the money. And so this is what this is about. So help me understand. So I get that you're adjusting based on population and minimum salary. I get that, and sounds reasonable. I don't quite understand the deputy coroner's pay and the death investigator's pay. That's what can you help me understand that? Or what you're proposing
Just
and
increase
the
it.
change, so.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the only change is going from the $175 to $250, just to acknowledge, number one, that
So the deputy coroner, instead of making 175, is going to make 250 per case.
And then there is no call time, so I'll give you an example in my
So there
community.
is call time, or the county can elect to do call time, or?
Counties can do that on their own. There's nothing mandating that.
Right, I got you.
But because we made the decision to back off on setting minimum standards,
Okay.
there are deputy coroners that will spend 2, 3, 4 days in a row on call. If they don't receive a case, they may have upended their personal life, and it's more difficult.
Got you.
So it's just acknowledging.
So that's
that.
left up to the county or the
That's
coroner's
correct.
office, whether or not they want to do it. So basically, deputy coroners getting paid from 175 to 250.
That's it.
And-
And ACCG supported that through our negotiations.
And
over
death
last year.
investigators at the 4 counties that don't have coroners, how does that, that's left up to the county?
It does not affect
And
them.
we're not
That is
adjusting that at all.
Independent, each county.
So, I mean, that's basically what this bill is, update the coroner's salary
Yes, sir.
and to adjust the deputy coroner's money.
And the
how much
reason
they
for
make.
that, Senator Watson, is to make sure that we keep competent people in these jobs. We think that the coroner system has been very effective over the years, and it's just getting to the point where you just don't have people. There's a lot of people don't want to do what you and I doing up here because of the pay.
Right. Yeah.
But we have to be dedicated, and there's not as many dedicated to doing it. It has evolved. It used to be that the funeral homes did ambulances, and we did we did everything.
Sure.
But all that's changed.
Thank you.
So here we are. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, any other questions? All right. We've got, first we'll go to Senator Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What is that, number 2?
Number 2. On the amendment deleting lines 93 to 95, so I guess could you explain that again? Because I guess I'm reading that if you've been a coroner for a long time, we're going to automatically give you a pretty big pay bump by striking that language. If we leave it in, it would be everything going forward, but if we remove it, then if I'm a coroner and I've been a coroner for a long time, I'm going to get all the cost of living increases, everything going back however long I've been a coroner.
No, they've already received whatever their pay is. If they're north of this, of the minimum salary schedule, then there's no change. So if, like in my instance, Ted Bearden's, our county, what's the scale? We're about 30,000 folks. He is paid well above $35,000, so it's not going to impact him. However, that language specifically, if you strike it, because if he's reelected after this date, they could remove COLAs at that point. So then it would put a position where, while he's in this current term, he would receive it, but then they could cut it going forward. And I just think it muddies the water, and it's already a tough area in which we're trying to acknowledge, to recruit, and to pay the folks that are doing the job right now. So I just think that by removing that, it does not prevent if that coroner retires or they die in office or they're replaced by an election, the county commission will have the authority to go to the minimum and start back at the base salary, which was what the last year of negotiations has been discussed that I've worked on with both sides of this issue. And there may be just a policy difference. That's fine. That's fair to debate. But I just think there's merits in ensuring that we continue to acknowledge the work that they do. And I mean, they're on call 24/7, 365, period.
Okay, Senator Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Mathis and Representative Boyd, thank you for bringing this. I know that these people have not been touched in 30 years. And I mean, where I live, I've known my coroners the last several, and I've been friends with all of them. The current coroner's an old and dear friend of mine, does a wonderful job. He's on call all the time, so I get all that. But I will tell you that I have had calls. I represent 6 counties, and I never hear from all 6 counties about anything. And I have heard from every county about this bill. They tell me that and I realize people have been trying to do this for a long time, but they tell me that that they're not prepared, that they can't afford it, that it's not in their budget, and I was wondering if it would make any sense if you would agree to maybe an amendment where you have this slated to start 1/1/25. What if we pushed it out a year? What if we pushed it to 1/1/26 to give all of these counties time to make some plans? Said, look, you want bodies piling up, you want this service or you don't want this service. You can budget for it, you can plan for it, and it's going to happen. But when they call me up and they tell me, please vote against this, we're not prepared to fund it, we can't afford it, and we've not budgeted for it, it's kind of hard. And you know, you've done this service, and I know it's a worthy service. I know it's worthwhile, and I also know we get what we pay for, you know, in all public service. Maybe particularly the legislature, I don't know. But still, I was wondering if you would, if we were to offer an amendment to push this out to 1/1/26, would you accept that?
Mr. Chairman, I can tell you, I've worked on it. Two comments. Number one, I'm amenable to that, especially if you guys are amenable to my amendment requests. And number two, we did engage with ACCG to have any specific counties reach out to us that had specific budgetary concerns. I don't know if there was a communication gap. I will let you know that I have not received any. I understand they're contacting you, but to acknowledge that, I'm amenable to extending it out till January of 2026 to allow the time. It's been 33 years. I don't mind waiting to implement it, but I think we need to put the policy stance out there to show the coroners that we understand what they do, we acknowledge it, and it's time for us to rip this Band-Aid and honestly not come back and have this debate and argument for every single year. My predecessor worked on this, our former speaker, you know, and I will say this, in the House, this did pass with over 160 votes, and so those folks were not receiving the same concerns that you did, Senator, but they may have not been aware, and that's fair.
And to your point, if I may, Chairman, I don't want us to get in the situation that this General Assembly got in with the mental health issue that we're going through right now. You know, we cut all that out, and now we're paying for it over the years. And we're trying to, counties have been lambasted with patients that are stuck in their jails. We got hospitals that are stuck with patients, and we have done some things to try to alleviate that. I guess that's what pressed me a little bit more with this, was to see that if we can ward off a crisis later, because we already know that we're in kind of in a bad way right now with the death investigation. So I understand what you're saying. I'm not against that. If we could do that, I don't have a problem, because we got a small county, and I get it, and I got small counties all around me. But I will say this to you. Every coroner that's in my district are very, very competent, from Billy Matthews to Harold Reese to Joe Smith, all the way down to Chuck Bethay. So I go about half the state. They do a great job, and their counties are fair to them. But we got some that do not, and we're going to get in trouble if we don't fix it. And I just want to make this statement. I think it's a great system, and I think we can make it work. But I do think you get concerns, and yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I don't.
All right. We got one more question, then we're going to go to the public. Five. Senator
Thank you, Mr.
McClung.
Chairman. Interesting discussion. Glad to see both of y'all. One thing that strikes me about this conversation is sort of a civic education angle, that this is something where, you know, if I'm watching episodes of Andy Griffith, I've got what feels like a much better civic awareness of the way that some of our systems are built than sort of the present day. And a lot of people don't know what these offices do. And so to your point, saying it's a good system, it's almost like this type of a bill, you've got to come prepared with a defense of the way we do things and have been doing things. And do we want a different system? Are we open to change? And so I tend to be on the side of, I think we need more civic education and don't want to abandon institutions just because the public is a little bit disengaged sometimes with the nature of those institutions. So, you know, even as somebody who doesn't have a lot of working knowledge of exactly what the coroner's office does, it strikes me as a good effort that you're making. And I just wanted to ask, you know, if there's any effort to, not just to take care of these aspects of coroner's office and the institution, but in terms of civic education, what kind of engagement do the coroners do with the community or the schools to make sure that people are aware of what they do?
Well, we do in our community. We go out to the schools and explain to them what coroner's office has done. I've done it. My son's done it. We go around. Civic organizations ask us sometimes to come by and just explain what's going on. We do that. We do reach out to try to make sure people are aware of what's going on, because a lot of, to your point, when people don't know what someone does, it puts speculation of maybe they don't know what they're doing, they don't know how to do it properly. So, yeah, we do reach out in my area. We do reach out to the schools. They do call us. They have career days and things, and we're part of it. So,
Senator Mallow?
Just real quick, thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my former colleagues in the House, just a couple of things. I think to do that outreach and awareness will be dependent on the budget that the coroner got from the county. Is that not true?
no, we just did it on our own.
Okay.
I didn't have any. We just do it.
Bingo. That's what I'm trying to make the point to talk about there.
That's right.
And one of the other things that my coroner did bring up to me for our county was about the deputy coroners, and he brought this to my attention that they had a case recently with fentanyl, and the deputy coroner had to buy his own PPE and assessing that because they weren't prepared for a fentanyl death. And to make sure that young man didn't track all that back into his car because he also traveled there in the nighttime by personal vehicle because he didn't have a take-home vehicle as a deputy coroner, so he had to respond in his personal vehicle because he didn't have a vehicle and he had to get to the scene. Is that not true?
It's true.
And my last question is, for most counties that do go to the medical examiner system, one of the reasons we have a deficiency in our GBI medical examiners is because the four counties that you named earlier can pay above $200,000 up to $350,000 for a pathologist to come work for them. So they leave the GBI because the counties can pay them more in those systems. Is that not true?
That is true, plus death investigators. Yes, sir, it is true.
Okay, we're going to open it up to the public. We have one person that signed up, Todd Edwards. Mr. Edwards, if you would go to the mic up there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it on?
There it is.
Members of the committee, I'm Todd Edwards. I'm with the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. Reflecting on the testimony, ACCG, it's true we've worked for a while on this, various reiterations of this bill over the House with Representative Wade and others. Some progress has been made. I think with the bill that had come over here prior to this substitute, it's legitimate to say that we still had concerns. I think what's most important to realize is that ACCG and Georgia counties, we couldn't agree more with it. It's very important to have competent professional candidates running for this office. I think the key difference is how you go about compensating them, rewarding them, incentivizing them. I think already through local act, any of you as members of the General Assembly can pass a local act and have this compensation spelled out for both your coroner, your deputy coroners, and other budget. If that doesn't work at the local level, they can set supplements, salaries. In fact, this is how we've been doing it for years, other than the death investigation fee for counties that are over $34,999. And I believe the sponsor, the speaker before noted that this wouldn't apply to his county because the county had taken that action. And then what's proposed in front of you is that it be state required. And not only for the current populations, if you look on pages, I guess it's the lines 47, 48 through 50, those are the only current populated counties where this salary is in place. This expands it to a whole new range of counties, all the counties in the state. So those are the differences that we have, not on the worth, the competency, the need to invest, the civics education, is that should this be required by the state, or as we've done it for years, have them work it out at the local level or through local legislation. Other questions are, is it a full-time job? Are they in fact on call 24/7, 365? That's determined upon the amount of deputies they have, how many cases the coroner actually works. Those are fair discussions and also an argument why this might better be taken care of at the local level. I will say that through negotiations, ACCG would maintain a neutral position on the substitute in front of you. We do have some concerns with the offered amendments. I'll go over those in just a moment. One thing that has been said and reiterated upon is this 30 years since anything has been done. Well, for those coroners whose salary is set in statute, that is not factually correct. Those coroners and those here, if this bill were to pass with those larger pay brackets, they get pay raises every time a state employee does, every time there is a COLA. So in the last 2 years alone, if you've asked what has the state done for coroners lately, the $2,000 pay raise or $5,000 pay raise in 2023 applied, as well as the fiscal year 2000 or the $2,000 pay raise in 24. So their salary and what would be put in here is adjusted for COLAs and longevity, and I think that's pointed out with the proposed amendment. refer to lines 93 and 95 of the bill. All this does is say with this new pay raises that are going to be brand new for all the coroners in the state, whatever that number is not automatically multiplied by 5% for each 4-year term they serve in office. So that would be done going forward. So this is newfound salary increased substantially. We're asking, or the bill does not allow the longevity and COLAs to be added on top of that, only going forward, not retroactively, not at the same point. As far as the other amendment that was asked for over on lines 104, I believe it was of the bill, taking out conducted and adding administered, it was a fair discussion that we have had with the representatives sponsoring and speaking on this bill, is if coroners are going to receive full-time pay benefits, is there a way to measure that they're actually working full-time? It was talked about measuring hours. It was talked about as the bill before it was substituted, is it the office work? We felt and do believe that it should be measured upon how many cases are actually worked by the coroner, him or herself, rather than perhaps deputies. If 70%, 75 of the death cases doesn't work, what about having to work 50% of all of them, just to ensure that if they are in fact full-time employees and not fully employed somewhere else, that they should have to prove it in order to get full-time benefits from the county. These are legitimate policy discussions. They have it at the county level, have for years. Y'all have it through local legislation. Y'all having it in front of you. We prefer it be settled at the local, by local act or through local supplements. If it's going to be required by the state, we feel comfortable that we've worked our members. We would be neutral if it's passed in the state it's in now. Should it be amended, I mean, we would reserve the right to have concerns moving forward. And we, too, have received a lot of calls on this. It was stated earlier that how many counties have concerns with this bill. This is probably one of the issues that we receive the most calls, contact from the counties over the years, the past 3 or 4 years, that legislation such as this has been introduced with the same arguments that I presented to you today. Again, it's not about the lack of worth of the coroner and the fact that we want to retain and recruit competent individuals for the spot. It's about how they should be compensated, what method, through what, arguments over full-time.
Okay,
And we
thank you,
believe
Mr.
this is a
Evans.
fine balance.
Appreciate it. Real quick, you're the only one that signed up, but I will open it up to the public before I close off public comment. Anybody else like to speak on this? Okay, we're going to close public comment. All right, we got to get moving, but go ahead. Would you mind taking a couple questions?
I'd be more than happy to, Mr. Chairman.
Just for clarification, so 93 through 95, do you want the not removed? Is that what you were asking for?
The language in the bill, we would not like that language removed for the bill. If I understand the proposed amendment, and I have not seen it.
No. I'm talking about, you referenced lines 93, 94, and 95.
Yes.
Cost of living increases, general performance-based increases, longevity increases occurred prior to January 2025 shall not be applicable to any salary calculated under the code section after January 2025. You're okay with that? Or you're saying delete those?
No, we like it as it is in the bill, in the substitute bill you were referring to. And again, what this does is ensure
You
that.
guys don't like that.
And the only question I would have for ACCG and the committee is how, is that how we treat sheriffs in this state?
So let me just understand what we're doing first. You're asking for it to be deleted. You guys like it. So you guys like it, and help me just understand it. So the cost of living increases, these have been done in the past
For current coroners, they may have that.
for current coroners now.
So Clint Mueller,
And then going forward, you don't want them to be applied, or help me, that's what I don't understand.
Clint Mueller with ACCG. So this is common practice, how we do it with all our constitutional officers. Every time we update the base salary schedule, we roll all the old COLAs into that new base. We don't continue to apply all the old COLAs on top of the new base.
Okay.
You can imagine if, these are compounding, right? Because
Right.
those COLAs
Okay.
have been compounding for many, many years. If we all of a sudden apply all those old COLAs to a new base, the number that you're looking at right there is going to be substantially higher than what you're seeing on paper. It could be double or triple that number if you apply all the old COLAs over time and compound them over the years. So this needs to start, the COLAs will begin again after this, but this becomes the new base, and then COLAs start applying in the future on top of that base.
All right, we're gonna move on. We've got only 15 more minutes in this room and another committee, and we want to hear Senator Anderson's resolution. What's the will of the committee? I'll entertain a motion, and then we'll take up amendments after, if we do get a motion.
Second.
So we got a motion do pass from Senator Hickman, a second from Senator Mallow. Now I'll entertain any amendments to the underlying bill.
Mr. Chairman, I would move AM 470093 that was placed here, lines 1 through 3 of that amendment.
Okay? So there's,
I'm moving the amendment that's been suggested by the
so
authors.
we got a motion for this amendment.
Second.
Second. Okay, we'll vote on the first amendment in just a second. Then we have another amendment by Senator Hodges.
Mr. Chairman, I move that, somebody check behind me if you will, but I move that the dates, January 1st, 2025, be changed to January 1st, 2026.
On lines 135?
On line 135, 126, 124, and 66. And if we end up not accepting the previous amendment, line 95.
Okay. All right, so here's what we're going to do then. You got all that?
It'd be Mr. Higbee.
Everybody got it? You got it? I believe so. Okay, all right. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to vote on the First Amendment from Senator McLaurin, this one right here. We've got a motion and a second. Everyone that's in favor of this amendment, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All against? 6 to 3, the amendment passes. Okay. Now we're going to vote on Senator Hodges' amendment to change the date. It's on January 1st, 2025 to January 1st, 2026. We've got your motion. Any discussion on that amendment? We'll vote on that. Everybody in favor of that amendment, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Okay, so those two amendments pass. Now we'll take a vote on the underlying bill as amended. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All opposed? 8 to 2, it passes.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate every one of y'all.
Thank you very much.
Oh, 8 to 3, 8 to 3. Senator Summers voted no.
Yes or no?
Yeah. Did you vote yes or no? Oh, he voted yes.
Kept his hand.
Okay, so it was 8 to 2. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Who's going to be carrying this for you?
We had a volunteer, Bo Hatchett, but we will yield to the committee
No,
chairman.
Bo, be good. Let Bo carry it.
All right, thank you.
And be sure and
Hey, I appreciate y'all.
go see Senator Brass and Rules.
Thank you.
All right, Senator Anderson, we've only got about 10 minutes, and I'm not sure if we're going to vote on this today or if we're going to just have a hearing. I don't know. I want to hear a little more about this before we vote, but if you could, you got Senate Resolution 754, LC 442800.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm number 11.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a very simple resolution creating a study committee for cumulative impact on pollution on economic development and growth. Senate resolution is about protecting Georgia's investment, and our major investment is agriculture. The agricultural heartland of Georgia needs to be protected. Georgia's leading economic engine is put at risk by air, soil, and water pollution that can potentially stunt crop growth, and affect both Georgia's economy and food insecurities of all Georgians. This committee is tasked determining policy and legislative solutions to air, soil, and water pollution and provide sustainable, economically viable, and healthy communities. And among the members of the study committee will be a community member who sits at the intersection of pollution and economic development.
Okay. All right. Any questions? We do have some folks from the public that I want to get in here before we have to leave the room. Andrea Jones, Ms. Jones, if you'd come on up. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Is this working? Okay. Good Good afternoon. I'm Andrea Young-Jones with Georgia One. I'm Government Relations and Public Policy Director. I appreciate you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak. I'll be brief. I know you all are busy. I want to affirm our commitment to becoming the #1 state for electric vehicle production and assert that business sustainability is tied to the well-being of Georgia citizens as a healthy workforce. We must also recognize environmental infrastructure, capacity, and sustainability as a part of the backbone of our state's economy. A study on how pollution industrial facilities impact property values, for example, home ownership, which is the American dream, but also home prices and generational wealth are directly linked to the surrounding environment. Lower property values are directly related to limited amenities, and poor schools. The health of a community directly impacts how successful economic development programs perform. A healthy workforce is vital. However, asthma, dangerous pregnancy outcomes, heart disease, and various forms of cancer can cluster in polluted areas. Highways, areas where there are industrial plants. Addressing the environmental causes of disease is important for the health of communities, but also for the economic prosperity of the state. Additionally, the agricultural heartland of Georgia must be protected. Georgia's leading economy engine, agriculture, is put at risk by air, soil, and water pollution that can potentially stunt crop growth and affect both Georgia's economy and the food security of all Georgians. Lest we forget the 1 million resident anglers who collectively spend 8.7 million days a year on the water, and more than 650,000 hunters who collectively spend 8.9 million days a year in the field. The combination of these activities accounts for over $2 billion in retail sales, $3 billion in ripple effects, and more than 38,000 jobs. Moreover, when considering public and private investment, the condition of communities is vitally important. Flooding of infrastructure such as concrete and overburdened storm water and wastewater systems, which are typically found in highly industrialized areas, and it's another source of pollution and a negative economic impact on communities. In fact, employers, businesses such as grocery stores, food services, healthcare providers, hotels, and professional service centers prefer not to be located near industrial facilities, thus limiting the job prospects for community residents. Therefore, a study to review and understand how pollution impacts our economy is needed. Just as we want shovel-ready projects to invest in, we also need clean air, water, soil, and healthy, educated workforce to ensure that economic development programs and projects bear fruit. Thank you again for your consideration. I respectfully ask that you vote in favor of this resolution.
Thank you. Amy Sharma.
Hi, good afternoon, you all. We got that to work. I'm Dr. Amy Sharma. I'm the Executive Director of Science for Georgia. I'd like to thank you all for holding this hearing on 754. Real quick, a poor diet stunts a child's growth, and cumulative impact of pollution stunts Georgia's long-term economic growth. Essentially, you can think of pollution impacts like too many bacon cheeseburgers. Sure, bacon cheeseburgers, delicious. Short-term rewards, many. And you could eat one a day in your 20s when you were young and spry. But sooner or later, it all adds up, and all of a sudden, you've got clogged arteries, hypertensions, and most likely a premature death. Same with pollution on our economy. Sure, we could handle this when we were young and spry, but we can't anymore. Pollution is adding up, and it knows no boundaries. We are running out of workforce-ready communities because pollution has stunted our ability to grow. We've already seen multiple cases where we've brought in a major job source, but the communities are ill-prepared because they don't have water, housing, or a workforce. Without understanding the complete cost, you provide these short-term quick hits, but you devalue the houses that you scramble to build. You shorten the lifespan of the skilled workers you scrambled to hire, and you impact the long-term workforce readiness of Georgia's children. They can't go to school and they can't get high-value jobs if they've got asthma and other long-term industries or illnesses. We invest billions attracting growth to the state. If we invest pennies on the dollar, we can grow more sustainably. This committee can understand the impact of these investments. The rewards for this upfront planning are not chump champs. Models have shown that if Georgia can do a small thing like cut heavy-duty traffic emissions in half, we would see $200 million to $400 million in economic benefits annually. That's not chump change. I urge you to vote yes on SR 754 so we can make sure that Georgia keeps growing and creates a better future. Thank you for your time.
Okay, the final speaker, Renee, I think Kale Kale. And if you could keep it to 2 or 3 minutes, that'd be good.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'll be very, very brief. I don't want to be redundant. I work with Citizens for a Healthy and Safe Environment. We are an environmental justice organization, and what we've done through the years is trying our best to keep industrialized businesses out of the neighborhoods. The disadvantaged, overburdened communities, black communities, rural communities, coastal communities are inundated with these businesses. So I am very excited about SR 754. I hope that you will understand the devastation that the communities are facing at this time. We do not want a cancer alley like we have in Louisiana where people are dying still. In our areas, coastal areas, agricultural areas, the air pollution is devastating. If you look at the EPA mapping tool, put your zip code in there, put anybody's zip code in there, you can see the levels of pollution. Georgia has one of the highest levels of air pollution, soil pollution, water pollution in the nation. So we're doing everything we can to keep all of us safe, future generations, your children, your grandchildren, great-grandchildren. We want everybody to be safe. So please vote for this, and thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to speak. We appreciate
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much. That's all that signed up. Anybody else from the public wish to speak? Okay, I'm going to close public hearing. We're going to just do a hearing on this. I'll ask for any questions of Senator Anderson. I appreciate you bringing this. I would say that we are one of the #1 states in electric vehicles. I mean, we are a clean state. I mean, can we do better? Yes, but I think we've made a lot of progress when it comes to electric vehicles and saying we want to be #1 in electric vehicles. And so we've done a good job on that. Any questions of Senator Anderson before we close out? Yes, sir. Senator Mallow.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to underscore that, as I've heard from folks in my community. We talk about the EVs, and one of the #1 things that my folks want to know is usually cars would, go to the junkyard. But what happens with an EV? It can't go to the junkyard. What happens to that battery? How will it be disposed of? Where will it go? And that's a major concern as we move in that direction. Folk want to know where those batteries going to go.
I agree with you 100%.
And it's so combustible, can blow up any time.
Oh, I know. Any other questions?
No, no.
Thank you. Before we leave today, this is our final meeting, and I want to thank the committee. I want to thank the staff and everybody. I also want to recognize 2 of our members were best dressed. We had Senator Mallow and Senator Dixon were the best dressed senators. So I brought this for you, Senator
That's
Mallow.
it, baby. I need that.
So thank you. Thank you all for being here. We're adjourned.
I'll put that in my obituary.